All right. We are good. I think I have a thumbs up. Wonderful. Well, welcome back for kind of what is our grand finale of what has been a fast-paced but amazing day. It's awesome to have had this full house. My name's Andrew Gall. I'm happy to be able to get up on stage and back from behind the desk for you guys for a little bit this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and kick off, again, the finale of our time. We start that off before our panel discussion and then the prize drawing. We do this in all 30 cities we go to every year. It's kind of a tradition. There's a lot of really amazing work in every region, corner, city, and then nationally, that people put into keeping us safe and secure. So we like to recognize, and basically we have open and internal, both open and internal polling among every community. So here in Charlotte, there's a number of people that were recognized by fellow peers and some people even from our team who have outsized contributions to cybersecurity. They deserve a little recognition. So I'm gonna, as I call your name, these are the people, if you heard at the check-in station, it was, I think you guys called it the VIP check-in area, but you're our honorees. We're honored to have you, and thank you for what you do for cyber here in Charlotte. So we have a little recognition for you, as well as there's a little gift inside to take a look at. So as I call your name, come on up, and we'll make sure everyone that gives a robust North Carolina round of applause, right? So, all right. So to start us off, do we have Bill Walton from People's Bank, Director of Technology? Bill, are you in the room with us? Bill, I see Bill in the back. Cheers. Come on up, Bill. All right. Mary Bulatow from Wells Fargo, Technical Ops Analyst. Mary, congratulations. Making sure that Scott gets his steps in. Everyone's sitting in the back. Katarzyna Lambert from Circle K, Senior Security Analyst. All right, off the other side, Scott. Jose Estevez, G&W Equipment, IT Manager. All right, hello, Jose, congratulations. Jeremy Woodall, Chief Information Officer for the CISO. Come on up, Jeremy. We've seen a lot of you today. We're happy too. Photo up. Charmer, just a charmer. Eric Wells, Kraft & Kennedy, Inc., vCISO. Elaine Painter from Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, Senior Cybersecurity Analyst. Here in spirit, hey, it never rests. Sometimes we have to get pulled away to go take care of crises Elaine here in spirit, and thank you for being here today. Dion Stovall with Carrier, Digital Program Manager. Dion. Chris Grissinger from the Agents Company's Director of IT. Sure. Was I supposed to be in frame? Did I mess that up? You were not in frame. Okay. Oh. Look, I'm inserting myself. Hey! You can filter out the shine if you would. Danielle Dorville from Devoted Health, Compliance Specialist. All right, Danielle. Grayson Palmer, Harris Teeter LLC, Senior Manager of Information Security. Again, here in spirit, here in spirit. Jacqueline Williams, Duke Energy Corporation, Lead IT Audit Consultant. All right, Jacqueline. Jeremy Jimenez from Spencer's Gifts, IT Specialist. Here in spirit, round of applause. Joshua McCrae from Hilton. I'm sorry that we're at a Marriott today. The Senior Lead Cybersecurity Analyst. All right, thank you, Joshua. Here in spirit. Matthew Alliott from the Royal Caribbean Group, Lead Cybersecurity Engineer. All right, and this brings me to this very special group of people on stage. So, of course, our panel, I won't ruin the thunder for what you guys have going, but you are part of our honoree family. So first, you guys, we've all seen John Opala today. He gave an amazing keynote from Hanesbrands, VP and Global Chief CISO. We have Katie Cipkala from LP. Huh? Is that not? I try my best. Does that not happen? Does that not happen? Well, same here. So we'll stop ADHDing out together because it's not our show. It's about cybersecurity and all of you. Katie from AVP Information Security, my dear Fred. Frank DePaola from Enpro, right here next to me, Vice President and CISO. Thank you. And I feel like he's the mayor of cybersecurity in Charlotte, Rick Doten. Cruise, okay, thank you for the correction. Cruise director. Is my friend from Royal Caribbean still in the room? Yeah. CISO from Carolina, complete. VP Information Security. All right, thank you so much, Rick. And I am going to hand it over to you. A big round of applause, for our CISO panel. They're taking their time. Again, cyber never sleeps. For this next hour, the floor is yours as you take us through securing the future with CISO Insights. Industry leaders discussing current cyber threats and strategic defense practices. All yours.
Thank you so much. So thank all of you first for sticking around for us. It's great to see such a big crowd. This is the third time that I've moderated this panel, and it's one of my favorite things to do because it's really just me talking to my friends. I mean, literally Frank and John and I were at the Orby Award, finalist dinner last week, and then Katie and I were, hanging out last week too. So my format is to people who know me is like, we're just having a conversation and you guys are listening on it. And I'm going to start with things like from what John was saying. John brought some really good things up about the CISO role and how it's evolved. He gave us a good history lesson, talk about Steve Katz. And I mentioned I was at the table with some of the bankers who were like, yeah, we were there when it happened. So we know how that whole thing when Steve came on, but it really was revolutionary in starting our role and how it has matured over so long. And it really wasn't until probably the last 10 years that we finally got some recognition where not just the big banks and some of the Fortune 100 companies had them, but I think I did a CISO panel for ISC2 for LaToya a few years ago that I think at the time, maybe 40% of the Fortune 500 had CISOs, at the time, and that was like 3 years ago. But one of the things that is interesting to me is something that John mentioned, and he had called out that I coined the term being a labradoodle, and that like you're a CIO and a CISO, and neither pedigree accepts you. But security, we accept everyone, right? And so that both Frank and John have taken on a lot of IT responsibility as their role has expanded, which who would have thought 10 years ago that then. So what I'm going to start with that. And John, do you want to kind of talk about how that, I don't want to say happened, but how it evolved to where now you're having more and more IT responsibility and what that seems, and if you think that trend's going to continue?
Yeah, so thanks, Rick. That's very interesting. I think the trend began almost 3 or 4 years ago. It began by most organizations looking at how do we enable the CIO and the CISO. In some organizations, it's a contentious relationship where either the CISO reports into the legal team or the CISO reports into the CFO and the CIO reports somewhere else. In some other organizations, the CISO reports the CIO, like in my case, the last 2 jobs. And when the CIO was exited, the company began to look who has the right level of skill sets, who can communicate business and IT and help right the ship. So it became almost a chance of opportunity. And they said, John, you've been doing this, you got this experience, roll into it. What I didn't realize is what I was taking on. Because I haven't managed service desk, help desk, I haven't end-use compute. There are things that over the last 20 years of my career, I thought I'd moved away from, and all of a sudden, they're part of your functional group. And you got to figure out, how do I ensure that business continues to run in terms of IT infrastructure, application support services, and also manage cyber side. So almost overnight, your role is doubled, your scope of influence is doubled, your problems are doubled, and the more sleepless nights you begin to go through, especially for a global company in over 60 countries. So there's a lot of challenges with the evolution of the role, but I think there's also a few benefits that I see. Number one, centralized decision process making in terms of technology, strategy, resourcing, staffing, and budgeting. Whoever has the power of the purse rules, as they say, right? Who has the money rules. I think I'm seeing the trend continuing, and many organizations are beginning to do that, or maybe evolving out of necessity. There are some organizations that still feel there should be a CIO role and VP of infrastructure, but the trend should be moving that way for right good or indifferent. My personal experience, I think, it has allowed me to do more things faster, better, I think, and improve some of the processes than I had with my predecessors, kind of controlling some of the segments of the organization.
So if your role doubled, did they double your pay too?
That's a good question. You wish they did, right?
and what you're talking about, like, is really like the service catalog, right? You know, I was virtual CISO for many years, and to go and look at, like, the CIO had a service catalog of all the things they did, and the CISO had the things that they did, and then we can kind of negotiate which are those things, and so now it goes. Frank, what was your experience like?
Yeah, so I call the CISO owning security and portions of IT the evolution of common sense. Right, so when I first joined Enpro, I worked for a global manufacturer called Enpro, headquartered here. I was hired to be the first CISO. The reason that they got justification to hire me was not because of the need for improving our security posture, but it was a regulatory compliance shortfall. So I was told that, like, I don't know, the first 30 days of my tenure there, so you can imagine my surprise not realizing that this company at the time wasn't fully invested in security. And so there was an infrastructure and IT ops leader who was one of my peers, and I would say kind of similar to John, like in that mode we all reported to the CIO, but the relationship was adversarial, right? If you think about the goals or the objectives of an infrastructure leader, they're different than the goals and objectives of a cybersecurity leader, right? They're about, you know, speed and efficiency, scalability, availability. And security, we're about, you know, probably the CIA triad, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. And so sometimes, you know, our initiatives would be conflicting with one another. And me as the new person, oftentimes I didn't win those arguments because this organization at the time wasn't yet prepared to double down and recognize the importance of cybersecurity. So, you know, through our tenure, we had some missteps. But as a result of those missteps, where I lost, the organization suffered because there were some risks that were realized as a result of those bad decisions. And so I had an opportunity this person left the organization, and I had an opportunity to kind of advocate for a better world, right, to my boss. She was ready to go status quo, just hire another infrastructure leader, and I actually took some proactive measures to pitch a world where the CISO actually owns all infrastructure, IT ops, and security. And at the time, her words to me were, that's way too much for one person to own. And so I said, okay, all right, well, you know, how about this? And I skinnied down my ask. She obliged, and then over the next 6 months, I owned everything I asked for, eventually anyway. And so now, you know, when you think about like the benefits of the CISO owning both, it really is like I oftentimes found myself, kind of arm wrestling over initiatives and outcomes based on, which one was more important. But now I get to arm wrestle with myself, which is kind of fun. But the organization is better off as a result of that, because I lead with both objectives in mind, right? As a CISO, I don't just lead with security outcomes in mind. I think about the infrastructure-related outcomes as well, and as a result of that, the organization is better because we're not anchored down by having two leaders arm wrestle over whose objective is more important, right? We get to be more efficient with our focus. We get to ensure that both areas, our objectives are met, and it's just, breaks down silos. There's so many intangible benefits by having an organization that's structured that way.
Yeah, because it's, at this level, it's really, and John kind of referred to it, this is a business role, and your goal is to support the business. And you are able to be objective on both sides of like, well, which is the important thing? And through proper governance, we're also technical people not making the business decisions, so you're getting that visibility. I think I agree that in particularly like mid-sized companies, like a $500 million to $5 billion companies, that this like makes sense, and that's why I'm seeing most of my peers in that do that. And the talk back to that is oh well, we separate them to be objective, but if your objective is still supporting the business, then you're going to make the right decisions in that sense. And it really kind of also depends on who the person is and what your own personality and ethics are and how you do that, which kind of builds into the culture of the organization itself, because we're seeing organizational shift and change. John mentioned it, if we're adding in AI, we're adding in data, we're adding in, compliance, we're adding in these other things is where they all fit in. And I think that it's easier to be the security person and then take over IT than being IT and take over security, because we know how the IT works because we know how to protect it, right? But talking about the culture question, Katie is in a unique spot and had done some interesting things in the within the bank to be able to do end user training and threat intelligence stuff. You want to talk about like your views on the culture and what you see as the culture shift in this kind of dynamic environment?
Is that on? Okay, just checking. So there's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of times it can be deprioritized, especially if you haven't actually experienced a breach. Sometimes we don't necessarily understand the importance of not just end user training, but education for executives and boards. And as we're talking about the past 3 to 4 years and the trends, the amount of knowledge that has been shifted upwards to talk business, ROI, things like that, that has changed how they view us and their support of us. So when we're talking about end users, it's not just training, it's not just the generic what's going on, it's what's going on in your company, what's going on with AI, how are people actually receiving the threats, and who are you working with and partnering with to get them where you want them to be. So in addition to that, if you want the support, if you want the budget, if you want the resources, you then have to educate your board and your executives and the people who you want to partner with to make sure they understand what you're trying to do, the purpose, and what they are going to benefit from doing the thing you're asking them to do. It's kind of like bringing them along. And I think for what I heard from all of y'all earlier was it's not just about having the security knowledge anymore. It is about understanding the business, understanding what they want, understanding what they need, understanding how security will impact the things they're doing on a regular basis, and how you work with them to bring them along with you. So you're not doing it to them, you're doing it with them. And that makes a huge difference with how they view your initiatives, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to secure. Right? If you've got the people that are coming in and are just like, well, we have to do this, and I'm sure everyone here has dealt with people like that. They're like, we have to do this, and we're required to do this, and it's not going to end well or work well when you have people and you're telling them what they have to do with disregard for what they're working on a regular basis.
Yep. And I think that as things are changing, John kind of referenced the AI initiatives and how everyone, business is trying to say, hey, what are we doing about that? And while we're looking at from security people, like, okay, what is our surface attack, surface expansion? What are things we worried about? What are our data governance? Do we have to support it? And I think that people are kind of rushing into it too quickly. Does anyone have any, strong opinions on like AI data governance and like the first move on that? It's something that I know we've talked about at dinners a lot for the last couple of years, but now that we're kind of like a lot more mature about it, what is your instance on like what good AI data governance includes?
So I think, Rick, that's a loaded question, and he just wrote a paper on this. So, so I would try to see if I can remember now. I think at the end of the day, you have to have a mechanism to make decisions on how data is transacted in your organizations. The AI problem, as I said, is a data problem. It's still very true. It's how the users interact with the data. Where do they upload it? Where do they share it? Who do they share it with? Could it inadvertently expose your company to risk? So I think at the end of the day, AI issue is still a data issue. And I think good data governance begins by understanding where your data is. And if I would tell you that I know where all my data is, I'll be lying to you. And anyone in here saying that, I'd like to come talk to you after the meeting, help me through how you did yours. Because I think companies like the one I work for here, it's over 100 years old. We've had all kinds of systems. We've got all kinds of storage. We've kept data forever. And large companies love keeping data. So we got data that have been there like forever and ever. Then over time, making decisions on which data qualifies as critical, high risk, et cetera, becomes an issue because you got 300 locations of it. If you add in the complexity of automation, data analytics, where you got your data scientists grabbing this multiple disparate data from multiple sources, dumping it in some form of common platform, dissecting it, and then running intelligence out of it to provide business outputs or business value, then all of a sudden, when my data was in a database, a structured data, I had controls at the database level. When my data is unstructured, I got controls on my shared resource, and I can put my DLP controls on that, digital rights management on that. When it leaves all these places, many cases, the controls you put in place and the protections that's to follow it along. And that's why I'm saying it's very difficult to tell where all my data is, just because the slicing and dicing of data. But I think a good governance model puts in place some kind of criteria on how data is managed, who's responsible for it, who are the custodians, and then the right policies and controls that requires protecting and managing them. So we are not there yet, but we are kind of building the skeleton to get us there.
And I appreciate that you started with the data governance foundation.
Yeah, so for us, I guess the way I look at AI governance is first, data is a big part of our AI strategy, but I also think about the full addressable problem of AI governance. And it's not just the data, it's also the tools, at this day and age, it's everything. It's all the web services that we consume. Every website now has a co-pilot enabled within it. Also these things are moving at such a pace that, in my career, I've never seen anything move so fast. And so what I fear, I know that to some extent I have to be a little vulnerable and tell you there's been a little bit of analysis paralysis on my part as a CISO. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is if we think about needing to protect the endpoint, it's pretty easy. We go out, we buy CrowdStrike, we put it on the endpoint. We've addressed the problem with endpoint security from a pretty complete state. But when we think about AI, we're talking about, first it was ChatGPT that came on the scene only, about 2 years ago. Then it was all of the co-pilots that started showing up in all these services to enhance them. And now it's agentic AI. And all of these things happened at such a fast pace that my biggest concern is if I invest in a tool, in a platform, wrap some policy and controls and a framework around this to establish my governance framework, well, next week there's going to be something else that comes out. And now I've got this huge gap in my attack surface and I'm not able to defend adequately against it. So we've been taking a slow and measured approach to really understand a couple things. One is, you mentioned something that really resonates with me, which is business alignment, right? We just can't look at technology and think that's the problem. The technology isn't the problem, it's the strategy of the business, it's the focus and the direction the business is going. And I really, as a CISO, really have to understand that at a pretty granular level so that I can get in front of protecting where the business is headed, right? And as it relates to AI, that's a pretty challenging thing to do. So, you know, for us, it's really about being business aligned, being part of the business as we develop our AI strategy, so that, you know, at least to the best of my ability, I have some way to get ahead of the ask, at least to a small extent. But also, my team is all day, every day, you know, keeping up with the latest and greatest in AI advancements, because it's our job, both on the threat side of things, but also in terms of creating AI governance and making sure that we're adequately protecting the business. You know, it's a core criteria, but super difficult to do.
Well, to John's point before about adaptability and agility is so important. Katie?
So I was just going to say, we've got data, right? We've got the tools, but we also have the people, right? And what do people do? They just want to get their jobs done in the best way possible so they can go home and do what it is that they enjoy doing, right? So they're going to go, and I say they, this is years of experience in internal audit and fraud. People are going to find a way, just like Jurassic Park, right? Life will find a way. So they're going to find a way. If you say, you know what, we're going to shut down ChatGPT, nobody can use it, we're going to block it. I mean, that's not the only one out there. They're going to figure something else out, right? So what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is it that you want to help them with? But also talk to them. Why are they using it? Why are they doing it this way? You know, we had people, it's like, why are you using ChatGPT? They're like, well, it's easier than Google. I mean, okay, but also, what are you putting in there? What kind of information are you putting in there? Just talking to them and understanding what their goal is. It gives you a different perspective on what you're trying to secure, and maybe give a better solution with education so that you're not faced with the same problems over and over and over again. Because you've got tools, and you've got where you want your data to go, and you don't know where it is, just like you don't know what all your assets are. But it's like the people are always that one part that are the wild card, and you don't know how they're going to do it. So if you partner with them and with the business to understand what they're trying to achieve, you get a better result than if you're just trying to implement security controls over everything.
Mm-hmm. And you're kind of alluding to like the people just running forward. You know, Frank, we had talked about like how sometimes there's not a clear AI strategy, and from the top, and they're just saying, hey, do as much as you can anywhere you can, which can be confusing and also counterproductive in that sense. So we talked about audit and things. Let's think about John had mentioned in his talk earlier about how incidents can sometimes, you know, make or break you as a CISO. You know, you talked about Joe Sullivan with the Uber incident, and then, you know, Tim Brown with Salesforce. SolarWinds, sorry, with SolarWinds. Salesforce is a new one. That's totally different. But and we talked about, because we've been on panels together and separately about people saying, like, oh, CISOs are getting scrutinized more and there's a lot more liability. Look at these two people getting sued. I'm like, remember when Steve Katz started in 1995? That's been 35 years and there's been two. That's not a trend. And those two people did things that I wouldn't have done to be able to get in that position. And so, but you also bring up I'll use one example and then I'm going to pass it to you, is I was at an event with the former CISO at MGM. Remember, MGM had a ransomware very close to the same time that Caesar's Palace had one, and one handled it better than the other. Well, now the MGM CISO is now their CIO, because that's another career path that we would have never thought of 5 years ago. It would have been the career path of a CISO is be a CISO at a bigger company. Now it is take over IT roles, become the CIO, and bring up one of your friends as the CISO because you run it anyway, right? And so by handling it very well can elevate you in the organization. Handling it poorly cannot. So.
I agree with that. I think
We can hear you, it's fine.
I think that the role of a CISO is kind of a dual role. So one, we have to understand the technologies, as Frank was saying. We understand the people, and make sure we have the clear alignment with the technology, the people, and the business. But the CISO role really meets its test when you have an incident. And I think one of the ways to ensure that, and not everything will work 100%, but one of the ways to ensure that you are able to come out without a lot of scars is making sure there's a cyber incident response plan. Ensuring along with that, you got your response playbooks which are tested, and many times we do this very high level, I go hire EY or KPMG, they do tabletop exercises, an hour into it, they inject something, and at the end of it, you walk away. I'm seeing do more routinely review of that, ensuring that the key people that you did from infrastructure, from application, from business, from corporate communication, legal, incident response partners, if you got one, there's a clear alignment that enables you to more quicker, faster decisions when you are under attack. I think that plays a big role in having that process well defined. People know what it is. You don't have to go be looking for your incident response plan in the middle of an incident. It's kind of too late for that. There are some incidences where some people had their incident response plan in the same storage on the Azure stack that was compromised. So the threat actors kind of denied them access to it. There was no print copy, no other offline copy anywhere. So they had to figure out, who do we need to call? I've heard of cases where there was no out-of-band calling mechanism to call people into a bridge. So you have a call going on, and the threat actor dialed in with you in your team's invite, and they are listening to everything you are talking about, and they are pivoting as you're working through. So I think having a plan ahead of time, being more prepared at the offset would enable you to manage crisis much better. Also, ethical decision making. Don't be in a hurry to paint the good picture. Many a times we're in a hurry to say, we think this began on this branch, maybe the only 4 people impacted, it's not as bad. And therefore the leadership begin to think, yeah, John is in charge, everything is working. Then tomorrow morning you realize that half of the company is now down, right in the middle of it. So I think not being quick to make overgeneralization of the problem statement at the offset will help you. Give yourself some time to validate what's going on, so you can make the right corrective decisions, will enable you to do that. And also, how you message that out is very important. Many times, in some of the case studies that Rick referenced, it wasn't that the people were bad, but they made wrong decisions with good intentions. They responded to things differently without thinking it through, and therefore it fell all apart. So a recovery that could have taken maybe a week, 2 weeks, end up taking 3 months or longer. So I think at the end of the day, is how you pivot into crisis management. I think that could help you save the day, and making sure you got a clear communication channel between your executive leadership board, who talks to the board of directors, and the person that becomes a commander in the incidents that runs the technical tracks to make sure everything is working. Early in my career, I was part of an incident where we had one giant bridge, and we had everybody and their grandma join the call, and the most senior guy in the room say, why can't you just restart the server? And we're like, you can't do that. So, and we ended up spending more time explaining technical stuff to a business executive that had no business being in that call. So that's about an hour, 2 hours we wasted. The technical team could have done their job. So planning through, I want to be having my technical track, I want to be having my leadership track, my legal track and all that, and having all that kind of pre-planned based on your response book will help you work through that. So in my experience, yes, I agree with Rick. An incident can shape you, make you a better leader, or can ruin your career, at least for a period of time.
Mm-hmm. And also, like you kind of alluded to, make sure both of them should have consulted with counsel. Frank, or Katie,
Oh,
go
I just
ahead.
got really excited listening to you talk because there's some key points that I've learned along the way. First of all, Grandma, if she knows what you're talking about on a bridge, that's impressive. So
Yeah,
it's
smart
not
grandma.
just like, especially now, it's not just about having a crisis communication plan for if something happens to you, right? Your customers, whoever you're working with, they're also going to say, hey, what about you? What do you have in place? If it didn't happen to you, great, but they're going to ask. So having something planned that you can go ahead and provide out and not have to go through the 18 different layers of red tape is amazing. But then in addition to that, see, I'm thinking about what you said about Grandma. I got distracted. My bad. Yeah, I know. Well, you go ahead. I'm going to come back to that. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Frank.
So I'm gonna double down on something John said about the incident response planning, and I think it was the great philosopher Mike Tyson said that everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Yep.
And I only say that to say practice, 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 right? I served in the military. Thank you for any veterans out there, but we practiced in peacetime to prepare for wartime. And that's what you got to do. We talk about tabletops all the time, but I'll be honest, like I don't know how many people really do tabletops. And I think one thing that John talked about was, a lot of people do tabletops with your technology teams. But a breach is not a technology problem, it's a business problem. And if you're not pulling in your business stakeholders and making it about business recoverability and your ability to recover operations and start generating revenues again, then you're missing the mark. And so I tell you, like, and those of you who know me, you've probably heard this a half dozen or more times. My company, we hosted 26 incident response tabletops last year. We did one with each one of our business units. And it was not about technology. Technology was the catalyst that drove the conversation, but we pulled all of the business stakeholders from each functional area of every business in our portfolio, and we talked about business operations, resilience, what dependencies do they have to, we're manufacturing, so manufacturing and shipping product, customer criticality, customer requirements, all of these things that often go unthought of when technology teams are talking about technology-focused incident response tabletops. The other thing I'll say is, we're a global publicly traded company. We have a corporate home office team with like legal and finance and folks that have responsibilities around SEC reporting and other regulatory compliance requirements. And so when we think about that, as part of your incident response tabletops, you also have to understand the relationship that legal is going to play in breach response. If you have cyber insurance, do you have a breach coach? Do you have, are you obligated to pull in your law firm, your external law firm, so that all your conversations are covered under confidentiality, right? These things are things that technology-focused teams focusing on responding to technical problems are not going to surface. But if you wait until an active breach to start talking about those things, you are going to be in a world of hurt.
And don't have it on a SharePoint that's going to get locked up with the ransomware.
All right, so Rick, my ADHD just came back around, so that
Please.
was a live demo for y'all. All I was going to say is, in addition to the crisis communication plan, you have to realize that when people are now reading those 8Ks, they can tell if you're prepared. Like the times that I've read it, especially when it first started coming out, you could see who was prepared. You could see exactly who knew what they were talking about, because some of them it was like, oh, should you have said that publicly for the record? And the answer was no. So if you've got those things prepared and you're ready and everyone's signed off and you're not in a rush and panic as you're trying to respond to something, people can tell, and it makes a big difference for your credibility. So have things like that prepared, approved, and ready to go in the event that it does happen, or when it does happen. I mean, I hope not.
When it's going to happen. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll take questions a little bit. I'm just prepping that because it takes people a few minutes to like come up with the question and let you know that's happening. Oh, Ben is just no time whatsoever. Ben has a question.
He's had a question for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, he's been sitting on a question. Ben's like, how come I wasn't on the panel? But the. All right. So go ahead. I have one more question for them, but go ahead and ask your question. We'll see what you may. Okay. So Frank and I both talk to a lot of startups. It's a thing that we do. We work with venture capital firms and kind of do that. And I think it's something that I think a lot of our peers, and I we actually have a Israeli embassy is bringing a bunch of Israeli cybersecurity startups coming in later this month. You know, that I forget being spoiled that I talk to them all the time. Literally was talking to one at 7 a.m. this morning that most people don't. And you know, we talk about this a lot about socializing and like how important it is. And Frank, you want to talk about that? Is like how important it is to like talk to the startups, the sales companies, kind of from an education standpoint for seeing where things are going, to see who the big companies are going to buy in 18 months, you know, before they do buy it, and kind of understanding that.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is if you don't incorporate startups as part of your cybersecurity strategy, you're missing a huge opportunity. So, you know, maybe a little bit farther back in my career, I worked for Humana. And, you know, Humana is a household name, Fortune 50, I mean, huge organization. And I was part of a team that engaged startups all the time, pulled them in. And the great thing about Humana is they have so much power and scale that we were able to engage a startup with a really solid founder and get them to build their commercial product with our requirements in mind. So basically, they were building commercial solutions for Humana. And that always stuck with me, right? So fast forward to where I am with Enpro. Enpro, how many people have ever heard of Enpro? Unless you know me, a few people, right? It's not a household name. We don't have a lot of name brand recognition, right? But a great company. And so what I did at Enpro is, as Rick mentioned, I love to work with startups. I love like this, it's kind of like a different role as a CISO. It's not just, you know, helping to manage risk for the organization, but it's actually like I get to be creative. I get to help somebody understand my pain points so that they can build a commercially viable product and help everybody at scale. And so the other thing about that is through those relationships, you can establish design partnerships with these startups. So if you've got some problems to solve, you can incorporate some, you know, key startups, do design partnerships, which means you get their product at a significant discount or free, and all that's required is you to provide some regular feedback on whatever it is. So, you know, I never thought that a company the size of Enpro could ever have that type of power that Humana had, but it's part of our strategy. So that's the first part. The other part of that coin is by engaging founders, you're hitting CEOs when they're just entering the market. And it's a hell of a powerful networking tool to meet imagine if you had, you know, George Kurtz's phone number on your phone, and you can just call him up and talk, you know, sports or whatever. I mean, that's kind of what you have. You establish grassroots relationships with these founders, and as they're growing and they're evolving, oftentimes there's opportunities that could be lucrative for the CISO. Sometimes they invite you to be an advisor to their company, which means you get equity comp. There's other times where, let's say, maybe somebody gets laid off, or you find yourself maybe not wanting to be a industry CISO anymore. You want to go be a product CISO. Then they'll hire you to be their product CISO. So it's a, you know, we talk a lot about the SEC rule. I think me personally, I was disappointed that they removed the requirement for security leadership to be on public boards. Anybody else in that boat? I thought that's a sure path for me to find my way on a board. That's my long goal. Like I'd love for that. This is another way, working with startups, to kind of have that same type of you know, financial compensation and playing the long game and getting some equity to advise or, you know, to network and be a part of startups. So that was what I wanted to share.
Yep.
I was going to say, you don't have to have that role necessarily. Don't think just because you're not a chief of something, because you have multiple, that's why I said of something. So you don't have to be that level to be involved with them or to give them, you know, any advisory capacity, right? They're looking for experts in your field. You don't have to, you know, self-select yourself out of working with them. You can, what I've found is they don't have the same restrictions as some of the established companies, so they're able to move faster and evolve quicker in line with, you know, the evolution of threats and everything else. Like they're advancing sometimes at a faster pace than established companies because they don't have the same red tape, rules, et cetera, right? But I love getting involved with them because not only do you learn, but you get in with ground floor. You can help them learn things about what they need to know, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
I agree with everything that's been said.
Yeah, to Frank's part, like I talked to Wiz when they were 40 people. And so I still know Soft very well. And so, like you said, it's like you kind of grow up with them, and then they become the big bear on the block. Okay, Ben, you have a microphone now.
Yeah. Also, this is like a super impressive microphone. So like,
You sound great.
Props to the AV guy. Like, this is great.
Shout out to the sound guy.
Yeah. So first off, we need to go back to grandma. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm glad you came back to that. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. No. You were talking like the first question was like the labradoodle question, right? I don't know if you actually use the term, but that's what Rick calls CISOs and CIOs. But you know, we've seen a lot of labradoodles that are CISOs that become kind of that head of security, you know, like towards the CIO role sort of thing. Would you ever trust it? Would you ever trust it the other way around? Right. It's always what I see is the CISO gets infrastructure. Like I've personally never worked with a head of infrastructure that I would want to be a CISO.
Right. I think we see that in the smaller companies. You know, that there was a thing.
And nobody in this room knows who I've worked for, so it's fine, right?
Right. That and Ben's not wanting to give up the microphone yet. I've seen that with like, you know, the 99% of smaller companies are outside the Fortune 2000 who probably shouldn't have hired a CISO in the first place but thought it was cool, and probably hired a tool jockey because they didn't know what a good one looks like. And you know, being the first CISO, so hiring someone who's the first CISO is a very different person than someone who's the second CISO, is someone we talk about. And Frank represents that, and John represents that, and I've represented it a few times. And so, but yes, and that's what I kind of alluded to, it's like, we know how the technology works because we know how to protect it. They don't understand risk management and all of the battle scars we have from the incidents that John talked about, from the work that Frank talked about, and from even just the audit communication, you know, training, all the kind of stuff that Katie talked about. That's my answer to it, but I will defer to the panel.
I think it's a skill mismatch, Ben. It's just because the head of infrastructure traditionally is a network engineer who's done that over years, that grew over the trade, or maybe an architect who grew over time, or maybe they did voice over IP, or data center, and those was a thing. And many a times they don't lean to the other side where you go to learn business risk and the rest of it. So, and you want them, many a times they end up becoming CTOs or CIO, but not crossing the fence. So it may just be a skill mismatch.
So I'm kind of passionate about this particular one, and I'll say, you know, when you look at the news, do you see, you know, Delta, they got hit with CrowdStrike, it was, and the focus being on infrastructure? No, you hear all about cybersecurity, right? And so what's important to the business is going to drive the decision making within the business, in my opinion. And so I think that, you know, cybersecurity is of utmost importance. I heard my CEO say that cybersecurity is the most important risk to Enpro. And that was like, I mean, that was all I needed. I'm like, hell yeah, let's get that budget rolling.
Where's that double pay thing that I'm doing?
Yeah, hey, you know, I'm not feeling adequately compensated, but no, I'm just kidding. But you know, I really think that's what it is. It's what's important to the business will drive the decisions that the business makes. And so when it comes to like the common sense, you know, test, does it make sense for an infrastructure leader to make risk decisions that affect the whole business when they don't really truly understand how to effectively make risk management decisions? Absolutely not. But on the flip side of that, most security professionals and leaders probably have some level of experience working within infrastructure. And so I think that, you know, there's a more common alignment with security leaders that have infrastructure experience than the inverse of that.
Yeah. And it's like what John had said in his thing, he talked about like that it's about business risk, which is true. The phrase I always use is like IT risk management is not about protecting IT, it's about protecting the business. Do you have something you want to add?
Well, he handed me the microphone,
Oh,
so I
okay.
mean, I've always got something to talk about, you know? The only thing I was gonna add is we keep talking about risk management, we're talking about the business, and we're talking about budget. Like, leverage those things when you're going to ask for money, right? Everyone needs money. One of the things I've done before, you go to enterprise risk management, and they're literally, they've got a list of what the key risks are to the company. If you're not looking at that and saying, well, hey, enterprise risk management says we're number 2, are we putting our money there? If the answer is no, maybe you should point that out. Like, that is something that you can use your partners, whether you like them or not, to advance the things that you need. See, Ben, that was funny. Because I know sometimes we don't necessarily like some of the partners, but we still have to work with them. Sorry, Rick, that just.
So we have a question here.
It's a question and a statement at the same time. So I know we were speaking about small or starting emerging businesses. I just wanted to see how you guys, I can see it, how it can be thought of for people who are emerging into cybersecurity. So a lot of people who are trying to get into cybersecurity or into InfoSec or whatever new fancy terminology we want to use, they don't get those same opportunities to get the ear or the eye of people who are willing to work with them and get them to where they need to be. So I understand you speaking about working with those companies in their infancy. What about, I just want you guys, have you ever worked with someone in their cybersecurity journey, in their infancy? And I would like to remind others to do the same. So we speak about working with these smaller companies. Just remember, there are smaller people who have the passion and the drive and the everything they need. They just need that opportunity to get their foot in the door. So it was more of a statement than a question, but I would love to hear what you guys think about that.
Okay,
Yeah,
real
that's a
quick,
great
what's your
one.
name? I love your question, first of all. You asked me that, and I mean, I've told my waiter sometimes, they're like, oh, cybersecurity, like, how do I get into that? And I'm like, well, there's examples, right? You've got ISC2, they've got this certified in cybersecurity course, right? It might not be the most high level, right? But if you want to figure out if this is something you want to do, start there. SANS has so many free summits. Some of them are new to cyber, and they go through the different domains and things that you can learn from. So when people ask that question, it's not immediately like, let's do a ride along. It's, let's start here. Let's see what you like. Let's move forward, right? I've got a bunch of people, we go out and we talk about cyber, and they're like, well, how do I get into it? It sounds really cool. I mean, yes, it does. But also, you don't just go straight from it sounds cool to like, come and spend your day with me. So they've got to show that, like, that progression. And there's so many resources out there. We just have to let people know about them. So I love, for example, posting on our internal channels like, hey, this is coming up. You interested? And if nothing else, they walk away with a better understanding of what we do. So there's so many different ways that people can get involved. That's why I love your question. Sometimes we just have to know how to share that with people because, as you said earlier, there's a shortage. Or did you say that we're losing our jobs? I can't remember which. But there's like both things are happening, right? Like we're evolving. But there's just so many good ways to get in here that we just have to be able to share that and kind of advocate for it with people.
Yeah, pipeline's such an important thing because, 3 years ago, I did the keynote about neurodiversity in cybersecurity, and that it's about personality type and having the opportunity because, I can't train you on certain traits on multi-threaded, single-threaded, that kind of thing. But then I have a whole other panel that I've done for a dozen times here in town on the Great Firewall of HR, which is the limiting factor to that. And that's where getting among your peers and finding people is like, hey, you know what? I think Katie could use somebody like, let me introduce you to her because I think she can get you in. Frank, you were going to say something? Or John?
So this is kind of a passion thing for me, and you're really speaking to me like where my mind goes is mentorship. And so I don't know if everyone is aware, there's an organization called CyberSecurity, which is purely focused on mentorship. And so I'm a mentor on CyberSecurity, and I know there's a lot of great mentors on CyberSecurity, and I have met a lot of great mentees on CyberSecurity. And so I would say, like, CyberSecurity is a great resource, but it's certainly not the only one. Awesome, good for you. The other thing, and this is the most important thing, don't be afraid to reach out and cold call. Like, I'm a CISO, you know how many, I mentor probably 4, maybe 5 people within my own organization, and I mentor other CISOs, and that's not like a pat on the back, but it's just like, I've got people that were in my past, now they're CISOs, and I still provide mentorship to them. And people have reached out to me and asked, hey, would you be willing to, and absolutely, like, there's so many leaders that believe that we would not be where we are without the backs of others and the helping hand of others. So do not be afraid to reach out and cold call. Like, I'll be honest, we just, the last question talked about venture capital and advisory. And I'll be vulnerable and share how that happened for me was I was at another event here in Charlotte for security leaders, and there was a woman named Emily Heath. She was a general partner at CyberStarts, one of the biggest Israeli-based VC firms out there, founder of Wiz, Sierra, and several others. And I looked at her LinkedIn profile. Her LinkedIn profile was exactly how I would like to craft my career. So I reached out to her on LinkedIn. I said, hey, you know, you have done in your career everything I aspire to do. Do you have any advice? And it created a friendship that has led to so many open doors for me. And you just never know. Don't be afraid to just reach out and ask somebody for help.
That's very articulate. I think I agree with what both have said. I think, so in terms of career planning in cyber, number one, we own our own careers. No one can help you grow into the next role. You have to be willing to put the work and the time. Most organizations create opportunity for talent pipeline. When I see my boss was here, my old boss was here earlier. When I was at Silda, we built something called Technology Development Program, where we got people from colleges, ex-military employees. We ran them through 6-8 months boot camps, and then we promised to hire them. I did the same thing at McCormick, and we are doing similar thing now at Hands. But we also partner with schools for interns, and as the mentorship goes, I'm also mentoring a few people. Many have reached out to me through LinkedIn. Hey, John, I saw you speak at this. Would you have time to talk with me? So most of my Friday afternoons I spend for my career development and mentoring, because I also get mentored. I've got people that I reach out to if I need questions, I need answers, I need help, guidance. What do I do next? Now that I've done this, I think, one, you have to own your own career. To reach out to the right people who can help you. Look out at your organization. Do they have talent pipelines? How does that work? Are there rotations from teams to teams that could help you learn things? If there's somebody you think could be of value to you, join the mentorship groups or reach out to them directly on LinkedIn. And don't forget meetings like FutureCon. The reason we come here is not to hear us speak, but to connect with each other. And many of us have learned a lot. I said earlier that I could never touch Microsoft with a 10-foot pole. But in one of the meetings, one of our colleagues kind of presented very articulately how he was solving his business and cyber problems using Microsoft. So I took him up on that. We attended a few presentations he made, and that helped me make some informed decisions. So we all are learning from one another. Don't be afraid to learn and ask questions.
Yeah, community is so important, and Ben had just reminded me about Fish Club. The Fish Club is a practitioner-level community that's here. Last year they had a booth. I know Oliver and Madeline are very busy and didn't have time this year, but you know, it is a practitioner-level Discord channel, because that's how young people communicate, and that has over 900 people on it. And they do monthly events of just get-togethers, and it's just a bunch of people transitioning into cybersecurity, people coming out of school. It's a very diverse group. Sometimes we're part of those events as well. So look up Fish Club, PHISHCLUB. Did we have another? Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Rick.
Hi, Kara.
I hate to move off that topic because I am also very passionate about that topic. And
Bring
if
it on.
anybody wants a mentor or wants help with mentoring, please feel free to reach out to me. I really am very, very passionate about supporting, especially women and people of color in cybersecurity. So
Yes, could not recommend
and it's all
Kara
about
more.
your network. And Katie and I were talking about this earlier. People want to help. I think someone else said, don't feel fearful of asking for help, because people really want to help. But that's not my question. I am going to move us off the topic. Katie, I think you said cybersecurity should be something that we do with the business, not to the business. And I'd like to pull that thread a little bit more, and I'd like to actually move it from doing with the business, but for the business. So how do we make cybersecurity an enabler for the business? I'm curious if each one of you could share an example of what you think you've done to help cybersecurity become an enabler for business.
All right, so yeah, this is another. I get passionate about certain things.
You're passionate about all of them, Frank. This is great.
This is one of those things.
Perfect person for the panel.
I am on this endeavor to create this world where people view cybersecurity as a competitive advantage and not a cost center. I know that it's literally a cost center, okay, for all the literals in the room, but literally, if you have a mature cybersecurity program, it's a superpower for your business. And it's all incumbent upon the security teams to frame it that way. And so how do you go about doing that? How I go about doing that, or how I've started, this is a marathon and not a sprint for me, but how I've gone about doing that is to identify areas of opportunity where having a mature cybersecurity program has enabled business growth. And that could look like anything from, at Enpro, we've been awarded government grants, so millions of dollars for semiconductor manufacturing, because it wasn't all because of cybersecurity maturity, but it certainly was a big part of that. The other thing is cybersecurity insurance premiums. Year over year, our premium costs have gone down by 6 figures. And that is because of the story we tell when we're filling out our questionnaires, right? We're talking about how we're buying down, we're maturing, so we're essentially buying down risk, which means, you know, we're not as risky to insure. Some other things that we've done is, you know, through some of the certifications that we've achieved, like ISO 27001, CMMC, those are not just nice to haves any longer, but those are business requirements. So we're a defense contractor, and some of our businesses are, and come October, in order for us to be awarded new government contracts, we have to be CMMC certified. Without cybersecurity maturity, we are not going to achieve any level of CMMC certification. So these are the type of things, the type of lens that we as CISOs and security teams have to look at what we're doing, from not just, oh, I'm blocking, you know, attacks at the firewall. No, like, what are we actually doing? Think macro, think big picture. Like, don't think about it from a technology cybersecurity perspective, but think about yourself. You mentioned something that you know, I've been kind of noodling on internally, which is we're business enablers. But then I heard somebody say, well, you're not really a business enabler, you're a part of the business. And so I'm wondering, am I thinking about that wrong? And is there another evolution for me to think, no, I'm not a business enabler anymore. I'm a part of the business. I'm not separate from the business. And so, you know, so anyway, that's my kind of brain dump, my 2 cents.
So we're getting the hook that we need to close it out. So we'll do one, John, if you have a quick thing you want to say. But my quick answer is that the reason why Formula One cars can go fast is because they have good brakes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone. I think so. A practical example, one of the things I've done in the past and doing currently. So OT security is a big thing for manufacturing. In many manufacturing organizations, there isn't enough budget to allocate to that. So one of the things I did earlier in one of my earlier roles was trying to find a problem in manufacturing that we could resolve with technology to allow manufacturing team to work with me in enabling cybersecurity in the manufacturing space. So back in the days, if you remember HoloLens, the Google HoloLens for remote training, the digital twin conversation, we realized that our shifts were taking too long. And sometimes if somebody was sick, was the trainer, we could prepare the next shift crew to go run the machinery lines. So figuring out how to enable some of those remote learning was a big opportunity for us. Number 2, we looked at digital twins, machine breaks. We had to hire this guy from Germany to fly in and fix this machinery. And the cost for all that and the cost for keeping spare parts in our environment was close to $4, $5, $6 million a year. So we figured out how we could enable automation to detect when a blade is about to break. And that wasn't an IT problem, it was a business problem. So I worked with the process engineers, worked with Rockwell, designed some of those things, got it up to working. And I said, and by the way, since we are spending this number of dollars in fixing this, how about we allocate 40% of it for cyber? And that became one of my key entries into solving OT problem, and I've carried that over the last 3 companies I worked for. So I think sometimes partnering with the business, solve a business problem, buys you a lot more credibility with them that they'll allow you to work with them on other things.
That's great. All right, well, thank you very much for your attention. I want to thank John, Katie, and Frank, and have a great day.